All right. So, on this segment of Lies, 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 I will be discussing a topic that is very controversial in our society. And that topic is racial deception. So, our country's controversy with race first, of course, started with slavery. So slavery was a legal institution of enslaving African Americans from 1776 until 1865. So even though on textbooks it says slavery ended in 1865, we know that the effects of slavery have been proven to be everlasting amongst our society. One major effect that slavery had on society was it introduced colorism. So, colorism is just a form of prejudices and discriminations based on the tone of someone's skin color. So, if you're a darker skin tone, you receive less privileges, and if you are of a lighter tone, you got more privileges. So, in fact, many societies used a test called the brown paper bag test, and people would basically hold up a brown paper bag, like one you might have carried your lunch in when you were a kid. They held that brown paper bag up to someone's skin tone, and if you were a lighter or maybe the same color as the bag, you got more privileges. And if you were darker, you got less. So back in history, this thought process was first used to see who was allowed to work in the fields. So like the cotton fields or just doing the handiwork, like the dirty jobs. Like that's where they put the darker skin tone individuals. And then if you were of lighter tone, you got to be in like the slave master's house, either watching their children, cooking their meal, basically tending to the needs of your master at the time. So today, we don't have examples of that in today's society. Colorism shows up differently in our society now. We see this show up in beauty standards, in mainstream media like music or movies. It seems like it's always the ferret tone individuals who are granted more access to success rather than darker individuals. So to explore this idea more, I interviewed a Texas women's graduate. Her name is Kathy Hobbs. Now, Kathy is a white passing black woman. She is very fair in skin tone and she has straight hair. So to a blind eye, she would appear to be a white woman, but she is a black woman. And in our interview, she shared a vivid picture of what her experience was back in the late 60s and 70s in a predominantly black neighborhood in Fort Worth, Texas. So let's take a listen. American community is, where did you grow up?
I grew up in West Fort Worth in a small African American community called Como.
Como. What was it like growing up in Como?
Well, when I was growing up in the 50s and the 60s, I did not attend elementary school in the community. I attended school in another part of Fort Worth, which was the south side of Fort Worth. Mm-hmm. So saying that to say, I didn't have a real good connection in the community because except for the street that I lived on, mm-hmm. I knew the most people on that street. But as far as extending that out, I didn't know many other children my age. So that was kind of difficult because if I wanted to socialize, I would have to go to that side of town where I went to school in order to be with my friends.
Right. So, your friends are more so on the south side?
Yes, they were mostly on the south side, and most of my activities, like the church that we attended, it was in that part of town as well. So if I wanted to go to church, I would have to catch the bus and go.
So it was like that all the way until high school? Or?
Until the 8th grade.
Okay.
And after the 8th grade, then I went to the local high school, 9th through 12th, Como, junior, senior high.
Okay. So what was the demographic of your high school?
Predominantly African American, probably at least 99%. During that time in high school, there was a military base, and so sometimes students whose parents were stationed at that base, they would get enrolled in Como rather than going to the school that was on the base. And so sometimes it would be a little diverse.
Okay. And then, who did you feel like you felt more comfortable, or like who did you hang around more whenever you were?
In the beginning, when I first started going to come on in the 9th grade, I mostly hung around another student who lived on the same street that I lived on. And then we kind of separated because going into the 10th grade, she got pregnant. And so in the 10th grade, then I kind of started associating with some other students who kind of associated with her.
And what was their race?
African American.
Okay.
All the students there were predominantly African American. And even the students who attended Como Junior Senior High, whose parents were stationed at the base, there may have been one or two that were, you would think right away that they were Anglo, but then there were some that were of mixed ethnicity too, because military, they traveled around, and they might marry somebody outside of their race.
So did you feel like there was a difference in the way you were treated versus those, like your friends that you were around?
No, never in elementary school. And as a matter of fact, it wasn't too long ago that I was having brunch with two ladies that attended elementary school with me, and we actually started talking about that. And they said, no, we never even thought about it.
Yeah.
The only time that we encountered, we meaning my sister and I, because we have the same complexion, she just might be a few little shades darker and might have a few other features that, would be characterized as being African American.
Yeah.
But the only time I can remember that we encountered something pertaining to race or ethnicity was with a family that moved into our neighborhood, and they would make jokes about us or tease us about how we looked, but we never took it like, kind of, I think the way I look at it now, we probably took it like somebody teasing somebody because they wore glasses, or they had braces, because they were the same ethnicity that we were, and so we would just tease them back about their complexion.
Yes,
which was darker than ours. You know? So it wasn't like, I wouldn't say it was like discrimination or anything like that.
So, as we can see, Kathy had a different experience than some. She didn't feel like her skin tone gave her an advantage over those in her neighborhood, and she never attempted to use it as an advantage. So that's something admirable. Instead, she felt like things were an equal playing field, and if she experienced ridicule for her skin tone, she would kind of just roll with the punches and joke back with those making fun of her and her sibling. So she's someone of a different caliber who maybe has thicker skin than others, and just maybe a good ethic compass. So while her experience is one of the better life experiences, there are many famous instances of a fair tone individual or white passing individual using their skin tone to get ahead get ahead and get over on people. So our first example I want to look at is Rachel Dolezal. So Rachel is a white woman who pretended to be black, and with this lie, she eventually gained the title of the title of being president of the NAACP. Those that don't know, that is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Such a sacred institution to black culture. So yeah, she ended up becoming president of that association. She did do a lot of work within that organization, but she started to get discovered, and people started to become suspicious when they figured out what her parents looked like, and her parents are two Caucasian individuals. So when it was discovered, Rachel stated that she wasn't identifying as black to upset people. She said, I wasn't identifying as black to upset people. I was being me. I was being me. So for a black woman, this is very triggering to me because the NAACP is such a sacred institution for the black community. This institution was created to gain and protect constitutional rights of black people. So for a white woman to be able to infiltrate and manipulate the system so easily, it really makes me wonder if colorism played a role in her becoming president so easily. Like, was there no investigation? Like, how was she able to just come in and, just reach that high of a title without anything ever being questioned? Because in the black community, colorism is still rooted in a lot of individuals. So it makes me wonder, like, if her exotic appearance and passion, I wonder if that's what caused those to draw closer to her to not even ever question anything, because there had to be signs of some sort. So another example of the same kind of racial deception is Jessica Krug. Jessica was an associate professor at George Washington University. She is also a white woman that was posing as a black woman. How can I say this? I think Jessica is a little more, I don't want to say moral, but Jessica stated that she thought about ending these lies many times over the years, but my cowardice was always more powerful than my ethics. I really like that Jessica took accountability first and foremost, rather than Rachel, who kind of just tried to justify it as, I I was being me. Like, that's something that I just identify with, regardless if that's, her genetic makeup. Like, you can't just say, oh, well, I'm gonna claim to be Asian today. Like, that's not how life works. So I really like that she took accountability, especially because I feel like it is easy to deceive because fair tones are considered to be associated with more power and possibly seen to be more exotic. But what I'm sitting here wondering is why one would lie. So I have a couple of ideas of why one would lie. So I feel like in Jessica and Rachel's case, I feel like they lied because being black just seemed like a cool attribute to attach themselves to. Black culture is something we see is copied universally, but it's not celebrated when black people exhibit it. It's only accepted when others do. An example of this is the Kardashian and Jenner clan. Many times we see members of that family enhance their bodies, whether they're enhancing their butt, their body shapes to mimic black body shapes, or plump their lips up to mimic black lips, or even if they're trying black hairstyles like cornrows or box braids. And then some members even go to the extent to use makeup to darken their skin. And I'm not talking about like, tanning, but like physically using makeup to create a whole different skin tone. So we see many times we see that family do that. And these things are glorified on them, but the millions of black people that exhibit these features naturally go unnoticed, and sometimes people are shamed for having them. So yeah. And then I also feel like individuals like Jessica and Rachel lie because they knew universally it's easier to get ahead when you're of lighter skin tone. I feel like at some point they knew, like, ooh, like this is something I can capitalize over. This is a way I can feel accepted. So yeah. So that concludes my podcast. You guys can reach out to me via email or DM. I would love to hear your opinions on this controversial topic, and I would actually like to keep this discussion going. So thanks for tuning in.